Bonjour. Musko and Vishnakas, Ingin and Doanam, Wabozo Zibi, Edayan. My name is Kevin Finney. I'm really honored to be here today. I'm from Southwest Michigan. That's where I live and make my home along the Rabbit River community of Potawatomi and Odawa people. I lived there for a long time now. And although it's not my community of blood ancestry, it's been my community of family and my community of my life. And so I'm real honored to be here with all of my relatives who have traveled north with me, and honored to be asked by the Bay Mills and Sault Ste. Marie community to share a little bit of the work that we do together as a community. Happy to do that.
Uju was no day in addition to Biju and go down. They want to quay Ukichida, Miso Hideo, Anishinaabe Queen and Dow, Albosho Sepin and Nojba. Miso Chinandum Nongum Gishka, Miigwech, Ijichkili and Miigwech Madisuwen. We've reached this time where we have to do these introductions in this foreign way. And I feel that it's hard to do it in this manner because it feels like it's spiritless. But yet we have to persevere. Our relatives and our old ones still tell us to young Guamazin, be determined in your path, your walk. You're on this Skitagani place, Aki, and to try to provide these teachings in this manner. So Buju to all of you out there in these spirit ways of this new communication. We pray for this day, this gathering of hearts, of minds, of relatives. Which for the Matikuk we sing today, tobacco. We watch for that singing Nebet, Nagamoen, that singing water. And we watch to all those old ones that have left their identities with this place. For the willingness of some of us to become intimate with her again. Her hair, her medicine, her trees, her water, her air. Much to those ones that honored her in that systemic way. To call from her beauty. To bring to our communities these beautiful things that our people used to honor her creation. So we do say miigwech for this time and this ability to share medicine, to share words, to share knowledge, to share intuition. My brother Kevin is going to introduce us to this beautiful Botagen way, the way of our people. Home.
Okay. For the next, I guess, hour and a half, we're going to talk about hollow logs. It's seemed like a really simple thing, but there's like a lot of things in life that I've found that when you start learning about something, it seems pretty simple at first, but the further you go and learn more and more, the more you discover there is to know. And one little thing opens up into a whole, like, wide universe of learning. And you know, my relationship to this Vertoggen has been around 20 years now that I've been working with this and learning everything I can learn about it. And I feel like I know just this much, very, very little compared to what there is to know. But I've learned a lot of things along the way, and I'm happy to share that. I want to recognize too that although it's me and Punkin up here, we have others who are here with us in the next few days who are working with us and helping us. We have Frank Sprague from our community who's made a lot of Bhutoggens with me and all of us, and helped to get them into hands of traditional farmers and growers. We have Angus Ogilvie who's with us, who's been helping us get ready for this workshop, and Jenna Wood. Also, Dan Cornelius is here from Oneida Nation. He's going to be working with us for the next few days, and we're especially honored that we have our elders, George and Sydney Martin, who have traveled north to be with us and support us in this work. And we try to follow in their footsteps as best as we can, because so much of this knowledge that we're able to pick up is because their generation and the generations before them cleared a way for us to be able to do this work and have handed down little pieces for us to have. I think the first thing that I'd like to say, I guess, about this is if you're not familiar with the Bhutoggin, sometimes in Potawatomi country it's called Botagen or Bhutoggin. I guess all of those are acceptable depending upon where you live and what dialect of Anishinaabe one you speak. It's a mortar. One of our teachers who shared a lot of knowledge with us about this is his name is Buddy Rayfield. He's an elder from the Grand Traverse Bay Band of Ottawa and Chippewa Indians, and he summarized it up to me by saying it's a food processor. And that's a really simple description of what it does, but it's a partially hollowed out log, a mortar and pestle that is used to do lots and lots of different work. It's one of these things that if you don't have one and suddenly you have one and you start using it, you begin to ask yourself, how could I have survived this long without a Bhutoggin? Because it's very useful. There's two basic parts to it. There's the Vertoggen, which is the lower part here, and it's the mortar, and then there's this part here. This is called a Vertoggen or a Vertoggen. And the ak part is talking about the wood, and atik is referring to the way it's shaped like a stick, and that's the second part of it. And in Anishinaabe, when this part here, the Vertoggen, is if you say more than one, you say Vertoggen, which means that it's animate. It has a spirit. It's a living being, and we respect it as that. This part here, the Vertoggen is inanimate. This is an inanimate part. So this is Vertoggen more than one. These are a thing that we're working. Like, we do a lot of work as our little group in the community where we live along the Rabbit River. We do a lot of our work is picking up bundles of things from a long time ago. I think the Vertoggen is something like many things in for Anishinaabe people and communities where think about the last 150, 200 years and the impact of colonialism, the impact of all the forces of assimilation, the pressures and horrific things which have been brought upon Anishinaabe people with intention. The intention was always to remove people from the land, to remove the knowledge, to remove the sacred items, to remove the power from the people. And as those processes happened, these items here were taken from homes, and many of them were destroyed. Many ended up in the collections of museums. But there was a separation. In the same way, there was a separation from food systems, being able to grow and produce food, which is a direct connection to the land. As human beings, all human beings, our connection to the land is, our closest connection is our food. It's how the land sustains us, and it's a key part of that healthy relationship. And so having those things removed is a huge impact on health, well-being, on sustainability. And the indigenous food sovereignty movement that we've seen in the last 10 years has pushed. So many people have worked and are doing the beautiful work of returning traditional foods. And our work in bringing back some of these things, these beings, these helpers, is to be able to help those who want to make that connection to the land, to be able to utilize these as not as just an example of something from the past, but as a very practical tool to be able to use for food sovereignty. I've often said that when we think about food sovereignty and a food system, if we have a holistic food system, that food system, it includes as much as possible. It's like a network. So if the food system just includes the grower and the person who processes and maybe a chef, it's kind of weak. But if you start to include your baskets, your tools, your other items, you're including your artists, your craftspeople within your community, you're including the trees that offer those gifts, they become a valuable part of that food system. As human beings, our wealth, I've said this a lot, and I really believe it, and I believe it more over time. Our wealth as human beings, personally and collectively, is our relationships. The more and better relationships we have, the wealthier we are as human beings. So our relationship to the trees, the relationship to the corn, the relationship to the growers, the relationship to the ancestry and the knowledge that may be passed down with this, all of those things add to the quality of life. There's sustainability in this right here as well. This Vertoggen here, I made 20 years ago, and it gets used all the time. It's processed a lot of food. Our friend Buddy Rayfield, who I mentioned from Grand Traverse Bay, he has a Vertoggen in his home that he uses on a regular basis that he believes was made in the early 1800s. He has a photograph from the late 1800s of his grandparents with that Vertoggen, and it looked old then. You ask yourself, if you go to Meijer, Walmart, whatever store, and buy a coffee maker, a food processor, a blender, and ask yourself, how long will that thing last? Maybe you'll get 10 years out of it, maybe 5 years, maybe 15 years. This will last for 150 years. This is something that is going to be passed down and go from one generation to the next generation to the next generation. And when this decomposes, when this goes back to the earth, it goes back to the earth. It's not plastic. It's not going to be here for 10,000 years. We can look around on the earth and think to ourselves, people have walked on this earth for thousands upon thousands of years, and we can be very thankful that they didn't live like we live today, because we'd be wading through waist-deep garbage. So these are sustainable solutions for the future. That's what I'm trying to emphasize. These aren't things that are something just from the past. It's a curiosity or something like that. This is original knowledge that was given and gifted in this Vertoggen is something that is not just a unique thing to Anishinaabe people. If you go all over the world, you go to Africa, you go to anywhere in the Americas, Asia, Europe, wherever people are, people utilize these tools, and they're very similar, made in a similar way. And I don't believe that that's because, I don't believe it's because somebody had an idea and invented this and then the idea spread. I think that people do things in a similar way because the knowledge is given in a similar way. Someone receives that knowledge. And when we acknowledge teachers, we acknowledge a lot of things. We acknowledge the trees as being teachers too. You know, the materials, when you work with them, they teach you. When you make these things, you're constantly learning. I brought a few different Vertoggens today, and I'm going to go really quickly and kind of show you a little bit about them. Just talking about the kind of the variations and the parts here. This one here is this is a real typical Anishinaabe Bhutan. We have an image up on the screen, and I can't see what you're seeing, and I'm not technologically capable. So I'm imagining you can look at it. This is a photograph from someplace around Little Traverse Bay in the late 1800s. This is an Anishinaabe family, and you can see the woman standing in the middle is holding a Vertoggen. And the Vertoggen looks almost identical to this Vertoggen and every other Anishinaabe Vertoggen. They have certain characteristics about them. They tend to be short. They're not really big. Maybe anywhere from 18 to 24 inches tall. Maybe anywhere from 6 to 8 inches around. They have a double-sided Vertoggen. There's two sides on it. And these are smaller ones, you know. If you were to go to any Haudenosaunee community and visit and see the mortars that they have there, they're really big. They're really big and huge. And I had a conversation with Buddy about that, and I asked him, I said, well, you know, why aren't they like those ones? And you know, he said that it's because the people there, Haudenosaunee people in the past, were always in one place. They had big villages, and their farming was their way of feeding themselves. And the Anishinaabe people of this region were always traveling with the seasons. So, you know, moving from a sugar bush to a hunting camp, fishing spots, burying spots, moving within a traditional territory. And a Vertoggen this size here is actually really lightweight. You can take it with you. You can pick it up, put it in a canoe, you can bring it with you. So that's kind of the element of that there. Its characteristics, it's pretty thin walled. It doesn't have super thick walls. They're about a 1/2 inch to 3/4 inch thick. The hole on this goes down, probably I'd say about a foot down. Sometimes they're only half that much. And it's rounded at the bottom. It's always rounded at the bottom. It's not a flat surface. And the reason why is as you're working with it, and you're doing your grinding and your pounding, your Vertoggen will slide down the side, and it will always work its way to the middle, and it will churn with the grain or whatever you're grinding. And because of that, it makes it very, very practical. There's some other variation in size as well that you'll see. This one here is a little one, and it's short. You see some of these too, even very small ones. This is a smaller size pounder right here. This is an old pounder, probably 150 years old. This is a new Vertoggen that we haven't even finished yet. So there are smaller ones as well that can be used for, you know, working with herbs or plants or things like that. Sometimes the pestles on some of the old ones were made out of stone as well. This one might be a few hundred years old. It could be a few thousand years old. It's very old. Somebody found this at a farm in Southwest Michigan where we live, and it made it to us, and we still use it today. But I wonder how many generations of food this is prepared and what stories it might tell. But it's works really good for a smaller mortar. And there's some smaller pestles as well. This is a little short one here that is used for grinding up mostly herbs and plants and things like that, versus heavier stuff like corn or wild rice. So there's some variations in the size and in the design of these. We have another good friend who we've learned quite a bit from about the Vertoggen. Her name is Beth Scott, and she's Kickapoo. She's from her family takes care of one of the original 4 lodges, mat lodges in the Mexican Kickapoo community, and she grew up working with a Vertoggen to prepare food for her family. Learned from her mother and other women in her family, and we learned recently how to prepare meat, dried meat, into making gravy and soup in a Vertoggen from her. And her community, the Kickapoo people, are originally from the Great Lakes area, the southern Great Lakes, but they had a migration going west, and eventually ended up in Oklahoma, in Eagle Pass, Texas, and then in Mexico. And those communities carry a lot of knowledge from these places, and as they carry that knowledge, it's good that some of that knowledge is starting to come back here now, and those connections are being reestablished. But their mortars are taller, and they tend to be narrow at the base. They're carved in, and then they kind of a vase shaped. So there are some differences like that, but I think they all kind of serve the same function. There's another style of mortar I want to talk about. I'm going to walk behind Punkin over here. I don't know if people will be able to see me. I don't have a word for this one in Anishinaabe one, and maybe somebody, probably a speaker, could come up with a good way to describe it. Maybe somebody has a recollection, but this is in English what we call a sheller, and it's really big. It's made. This one here is made out of a beech log. That tree is what we call a jawimij. Talks about a jawi is like something that's not all that often. So like the beech trees or beech nuts come every so often, they fall, and maybe every few years, not every year. But the beech trees tend to be hollow, and they'll get real big and hollow like this. And this is hollowed out. This is for taking the corn off the cob. So when you harvest your corn, you can put the corn in there, and it's hollow all the way down, maybe 1 inch thick, and you can put your corn down in this. And when you use the pestle, the pound, there's a series of sticks that go across. They're about this big around, and these ones are made out of dry hickory, so they're really tough. And then when you pound this pestle, it takes and knocks all of the kernels off of the cob, and it falls down through. And there's a little door at the bottom, and you put a blanket or a hide down there, and you can take your corn right out. No one as far as I'm aware, has made one of these in a really long time. There's 2 existing in museum collections. I believe there's one at the Peabody, and there's one which is located at the Smithsonian. And I haven't seen them in person, but we've seen pictures of them, and I thought to myself, that seems like a pretty ingenious thing. So this spring, after this whole COVID pandemic happened and we were all at home, we thought maybe we should make one, and we did. And I thought to myself, if somebody put that much effort into hollowing a log, there must be a reason why. And I have one of those 1870s corn shellers with a big crank in my house, and we always shell our corn that way. It has a big flywheel, and we turn this thing and we throw the corn in. It usually takes 2 people to go pretty fast, and your arm gets really tired. This works 10 times faster. We were amazed at how quickly you can shell lots and lots of corn with this tool here. So this is one we just made like in the last week. We carved it out with a big chisel and used the adze to knock down the outside. We didn't cut down the tree. It was already cut down because the tree had died. And a neighbor was gonna split it up and throw it in his wood pile for his sugar bush to throw in his evaporator. But we rescued it, and this is a corn sheller. And I think these were probably at one point in time very common in a lot of the communities. But our work now is, doing what we can to help put these items, these things back in the hands of communities, in people's hands, in families' hands, so that people can work with them and build the relationships with them and begin to process their food and incorporate this back into the food system. That's what our focus is.
Yes, Kevin spoke about our relationships, our connections to community, to land, and the sustainable things, objects, foods that we've mentioned that have supported our families since we were placed here. And part of that displacement that happened, many of these things were lost to time and history. We have stories of Vertoggens and sugaring supplies being left in beautiful, groomed, maintained forests. And then our families would go back the following year, and those things were taken and destroyed by the settler nation that came. They consumed them, either destroyed them or kept them in family farms and attics for generations. Some of the bones of our people were kept along with these items. Some of those mortars and pestles that survive, weatherization, those have also been part of that history of trauma. Because I know if this was my grandmother's, I wouldn't have let it out of my sight. I would have watched her use it. Maintain that relationship. So I do know the destruction of these beautiful, power, sacred things. Heartfelt for me in the work that we do and why we defend it, why we have to defend it. My grandmother may have watched her grandmother use this. And so hers were just images and memories. I remember she would have a black ash log and make splints. So she still had some of that rhythmic pounding, some of that action, that sacred action that takes takes elements from our earth, turns them into food, or turn them into medicine, or turn them into items every day that we use. So it was just recently that, this spirit discovered the power or the mana or the sacredness of this particular being, because that's what she is. She's a beautiful being waiting to have communities use her again. When we take this rhythm, you know, this is who we are as Anishinaabe. We provide the rhythm to this place. Granddaughters would have taken this up. And we would have built them up, their power, their sacredness to carry this, to protect themselves, protect their communities, their families, preordain their muscle movement, their memory, to defend. And we would have done this with those loving actions of the grandmothers first. It would have been that first introduction. And then those beautiful clay that await their turn for that life-giving time in their life. They would have learned about this skirt and what she means to us. What is underneath is so sacred and beautiful that we cannot even uncover it, because that's where life comes from. That's how we value her sacredness. We would have become intimate with this shape, often the shape that accompanies our nene, those ones that provide the seeds to this beautiful home for our children. So they would have been learning about intimacies and understanding them. And that's what is so important about this, because it will teach our young ones in their own time how they can become intimate, how they can become sacred and understand those seasons that bring upon, you know, that time-honored wealth of knowledge that we carry. That's what the seasons do for us. They cover us up with that sacred knowledge. So it's important, you know, that we respond to that, especially in these times of missing and murdered Indigenous women, transgender, people of fluid spirits. Because they are so beautiful, they sometimes succumb to that colonization and that deprivation of human people. You know, our community of grandmothers would have garnered them in and protected them. You know, one time I was watching a grandmother use this, and I thought, oh, that's nice, she's using this and trying to show us in a good way what her muscle memory may have remembered for us. And she took her Sama bag, and she reached inside. Before she even put the corn in, she reached for a pinch of her Sama. She offered it to this one. And she put that Sama inside, and then her corn went. She was giving thanks. And even though she didn't think we were watching, because that's how we learn, sometimes watch and wonder without teachers knowing that we are doing that. Our children do that if you watch them. They're always mimicking. But she was giving honor to this one, this being, this beautiful sacred being. and this beautiful sacred tool that serves as that connection, that connection from the spirit to the spirit. And when you look at a lot of our ways, you know, our sacred Vertoggen works in the same manner for us. You know, these shapes are fluid for our people. We understand that life and creation comes from them. And we understand that as Chippewa, we need to find and amplify our rhythm, you know, so that the end result will be life. Corn sustains our life. Mandamin sustains our life. Menomin sustains our life. Odaman sustains our life. And, we were never meant to be pitiful here. We were meant to exist within her creation without being too much of a bother to her. She gives us all of this unconditionally. It's up to our spirit to go out there and find this. Can't do it reading a Zinnigan, although we cherish those sources. But how we identify with creation is through intimacy. Becoming knowledgeable by doing. Jitchkewin is what the elders say. Do things well and do things right. Never do things half-ass, or you're going to get a half-ass result. So that's always in the back of our, we learn this. You know, none of it comes from Walmart or across the sea. These were all forest beings at one time, standing out there with their family, holding the earth. So when we go out there, we give that extreme respect to them. We approach in our most humble way with our sema. You know, our minds collectively are out there, and we pray for each other's strength, pray for each other's knowledge of what we're doing, how to select, how to perpetuate, how to bring this from there, manage it, dream it, make it. So many processes go into this work that we can only fathom, you know, what the ancestors view. And we know an important piece has been lost with our language. Young people are realizing and making strides to learn. But it's been a beautiful journey to come this far with it in this amount of time that we've been involved with Indigenous foods, Indigenous ways, systems, listening to the elders. And the back of my mind, Mary Moose is always here with us. She carries such a great wealth of power from her place. I think of all the ones that went on. That we're so unsure of this future for us. So it's been beautiful, a beautiful life. Like these Anishinaabe knew. It's hard, but it's beautiful. And, we're just happy to be here in this place of the pipe, place of our beautiful people's battles to defend this place. Feel the power here. Much again for listening, for understanding, for making those connections. You know, our skirt is a powerful thing. And we as Kwewak need to understand this beautiful relationship that we hold with all of this, with all of this, with all of this. You know, empower our women, make their muscles remember so that they can carry this, defend themselves, defend their children, their partners. So we say Miigwetchigan, Miigwetchwendam for all of this beautiful life that we carry. Oh.
I'm going to talk for a few minutes about making the Vertoggen. Tomorrow, we're going to be working with some folks from the Bay Mills community and the Sault Ste. Marie community, and we're going to make eight of these for each community that will go to different families. I'm a crafts person, I guess you could call that. I don't know if that's a thing, but I'm a human being and I work with my hands. That's how I think we're all human beings. And I think especially as men, we have a connection with these trees, with this wood, with this work of working with our sharp tools, of carving, of harvesting. All of those things is powerful connection in shaping. I think of my good friend Django Stuart King of Wasauksing First Nation, who always spoke often of how our place as human beings in this world is in Mitigwanning, the great dome of the trees. That's our world. We're protected by this beautiful canopy, this big dome of trees over us. That's our realm. You know, and I think about that as a man in my work in doing carving and harvesting, and I spent a lot of years carrying black ash logs out of the swamp, learning how to be able to check the rings of the tree, the growth rings, to see if they were going to be thick for making thick baskets, because somebody wanted a thick basket, or whether they would make little curly cues, you know. Being able to look at a tree and know where it grows and why it grows that way and how it's going to be. Whether to look at what the growth rings will look like, what the wood's hard or how it is. And I was fortunate when I was young that I was taught that to know my trees. I was always interested in trees, and I was always taught to know my trees. So I think everyone should know their trees. When you go places, people ask, well, how can you tell what that tree is or this type of tree is? And I always ask them, well, if you go to a grocery store, how can you tell a tomato from an orange or a banana? You know, because you have a relationship with those. They taste different. You know. It's not hard to learn your trees. You have to have a relationship with them. This tree that we use for the Vertoggen, it's called Weenzik. That's its name, Weenzik. It's a birch tree, but it's not a white birch. You know, like I have a big cup next to me here, a big box. This is made out of a wigwasip, which is a white birch. When people think of birch, a lot of times this is the one they think of, the one that's used for canoes, for baskets, quill boxes, lodges, this one here. But this is a different birch, this Weenzik. It's a yellow birch or black birch. In the English language, there's lots of names for it, I suppose, but it looks different. It has a bark that you really can't usually peel it well. A friend of mine made a basket out of one, but that's a rare thing. The bark is kind of a golden colored bark, maybe silvery. It's real thin and papery. It has a pretty thick inner bark to it. Down where we live in southwest Michigan, these are real common trees, but they only grow in the swamps. They only grow in the swamps. And I think there's an interesting connection with that. And I'll kind of rabbit trail to make this point because I think it's notable. Wherever I go, in a lot of places in southwest Michigan, Ontario, Anishinaabe communities are always by swamps. And I think about the guy who's just president for the last 4 years. Try not to think about it, but you know, it comes in my mind, and when I think of the word swamp, I hear drain the swamp. And to me, that's a horrible thing. Like, you don't ever want to drain a swamp. You know, the English word swamp sounds so horrible. Swamp. You know, the word in Anishinaabe for that talks about strength. It talks about medicine, a place where there's medicine and strength of the earth. Like, that's a really beautiful thing. Those areas where, you know, water is that sacred life-giving force, and where you have all that water, you have all those beautiful plants which are very strong. If you reach down into that dark earth, you have that minerals, you have all of those nutrients. All those are medicines. The medicine plants come out of that. That's where the black ash trees grow for baskets. That's where the yellow birch is. This is where you find this biops. It grows in the swamps. You can tell this tree as well because it has a very unique root system. The roots are, they call them buttresses. When I think of buttresses, I think of that Notre Dame, the big church. It's got those big long things that come out of stone. That's kind of like this tree. It has roots that'll go way out this way, way out this way. When you're walking through the swamp, you've got to be careful and watch where you're going when there's a yellow birch tree around, because you'll catch your toe on that, land face into that muck, which is probably medicine. It's probably good for you, but it may not be much fun. But these are the trees that we use for making these mortars, and there's reasons why they're used and why they was used in the old days too. I'll talk a little bit about that. This is a very, very, very hard wood. You know, it's very hard, and that's important because the function of Vertoggen is that you're pounding with it, you're beating on it. And so it has to be able to be hard and heavy. If you look at the inside wood, the heartwood, it's really dark. It's very, very dark colored because it's very dense, extra tough. But another special thing about this one is that, you know, as a tree dries, when you cut a live tree and you have a round piece because the trunk is round and it dries, it will always crack. It checks. And a check is a crack that goes from the heartwood to the middle of the tree. This is a real concern because most trees that you'd make a Vertoggen out of, you'd make a nice Vertoggen, and as it dries or it's drying out, it's going to crack, and then you have a big crack in the side, and then that becomes a problem because all your cornmeal or rice meal or whatever you're making falls down in there. If you're grinding up dried venison or moose meat or elk meat, that's going to, mixing it with water, making gravy, that's going to get down in there. You're not going to be able to get it clean. So You can't have a wood which cracks. The yellow birch doesn't crack. That's the amazing thing about it. You know, the other part is that the bark on a yellow birch, just like a white birch is a lot softer. It doesn't work as well to make a Bhutan. But they both have a bark that goes all the way around. You know, most bark goes up and down the tree to grain. If you peel a piece of cedar bark or a slippery elm, you can make a cut in the tree and you can pull. And when the sap's up, or weegu, basswood bark, if you're gathering that, you could pull. And a big long strip comes all the way up the tree. Birch bark goes around the tree like this. So it creates a gasket. And that holds that wood right there. The thing about making them as well is that when you're out in the swamp, you want to look for a tree which is nice and long and straight. But it takes a pretty good sized tree to make one of these. So you don't ever make one. If you're going to make them, you have to make a bunch, because there might be anywhere from 6 to 12 Vertoggens in one tree. So that's a real big consideration when you go to harvest. We have a little video that we can show, and I think I can talk through. Well, it's showing that Jenna filmed for us when we were harvesting the logs for this this project. This was about a month ago. So a friend of ours from the Little River Band of Odawa offered us to be able to harvest on his property and to work with him to get the logs for the workshop. Go ahead and start. And you can see we're in a swamp. There's the bark of the tree, kind of rough and flaky. We can So I'm just pointing out to Angus what we're looking at in the tree. But you can see they're really tall and straight, so you get a lot of mortars out of one tree. You can make little mortars out of the upper part. The tree is good for lots of other stuff too. You see at the bottom of the roots, you'll see the buttresses there that I was talking about. You can cut those and they make really good spoons. So like a quabgan, like an old time spoon or ladle that has a curve from the bowl to the handle, the type that you use for granulating sugar. That's what you want to harvest to do that. You can use maple too, but yellow birch works really well. The trunk of the tree, you could also use that for snowshoes. People think ash for snowshoes, but it's actually really good for snowshoes. It bends really well. You can also make toboggans from it. In the old days, this was the best toboggan wood. You split out sections of that tree, and then you can steam it, and you can bend it up to shape. And here we're just getting ready to cut some more pieces for the mortars, and also cut some of those buttress roots for making spoons. It's a serious thing to take a tree's life, because when we harvest these trees, you can't help but think how long it's been there. And these trees are a lot older than me, so they've been around for a long time. So we want to make sure that we're using everything that we can, and we're really being thoughtful about the harvesting. This is making a cut here with the saw to remove a buttress and to make a big ladle. So all of those parts should be taken and used. Another thing about yellow birch that some people know, some people don't know, is that you can tap a yellow birch tree. And they usually start giving their sap right after the maple trees are done. The yellow birches will start out. And they don't just run like a maple tree, like they'll really run. You can get a lot of sap. Like it doesn't even drip when it's going hard. It'll be a continuous stream. It takes a lot to cook that down, and it's not really a sweet, delicious pancake syrup. It's a medicinal syrup, but you can just drink that sap and cook with it too. The bark of the yellow birch is good to use as well. You can harvest all that extra bark, and the inner bark especially, you can make a tea with it. You can use it as a pain reliever. If you have sore muscles, you can put that in a bath, the tea, and it's kind of like wintergreen. It has a similar flavor to it. So there's a lot of elements to this tree that make it a really, really valuable thing. This is just us loading up the logs that we cut and hauling them out of the bush. We used our buddy Dave's snow dog, which is a pretty cool little snowmobile machine, to haul all the logs out. We were really happy because we're used to showing up in the woods and having to pick up a bunch of logs and carry them for a really long way through the snow. So when somebody's got a magical little machine, then it works really good. This is our shop here that we share and we work in together, and we're just bringing all of the different sizes. There's ones for little Vertoggens in the front and big ones there in the back. And all of these have to be hollowed, and there's a lot of work that goes in. You can see that dark heartwood. That's the action part where we make the hole. And this is just me sitting around smoking cigarettes and all of that. I do a lot of that. So that's the little video there, a little bit on harvesting. So if you want to make one of these, and I really recommend, like, people will say, like, a lot of times, like, I could never do that. Well, you can do all of this stuff. You can do all of this and a lot more. Everyone's ancestors did all of these things. You have amazing, amazing abilities inside of you, and you just have to go and struggle through figuring it out, you know. But you can ask people as well who already know, and then that'll get you a lot further in making it work. But if you're going to make a Bhutan, then I recommend that you have a party with all your friends, because it's a lot easier to carry 16 chunks of log out of the woods if you have 16 friends, and then everybody gets a Bhutan, and then you personally probably don't need to have 16 of them. One is all you'll ever really need, unless you got a big family and maybe you can have some for the kids and whatnot. But we've only ever really had one, and it works really well. So once you get the log back to your house or wherever you're working, you got to hollow it out. The hollowing is really the tricky part of making this. The old ones are always burned out. They're always hollowed out with fire. And there's something to that, and I'm going to speak a little bit about what I know about this. I do a lot of woodwork. This is a bowl that I made. I make a lot of bowls like this. And this one is made out of, I think it's an elm burl, slippery elm. It was a big lump on a tree. It's kind of a big tumor and causes the tree to grow in knots. And it's really hard. It's like, if you're going to carve this with an axe and a crooked knife, like, it's some serious hard wood. But there's an old trick. And you can take this, I'm giving up all my secrets, but that's good. Anyways, you can take this big hard lump of wood, I don't care if it's laid around for 5 years, and just throw it in a big kettle, put it on the fire, and just boil it. I mean, boil the piss out of it for a long time. And pull it out, and when it's cool enough to touch, you can take your knife and you can scoop all this out, and it's like carving an apple. And as it dries out, what's going to happen is really unique, is that all of the steam is going to evaporate off. It's all going to come off. And the next day, this is going to dry out. And after it dries out, it's stabilized. It won't warp. It won't crack. As wood dries from the point where it has sap in it to bone dry, that process, like, it does something to the cells of the wood. Like, I'm not a botanist. I don't understand how all this works, but I work with wood and I can see it. It changes. You could cut a straight piece of wood to make one of these, and you could carve it green, where when I say green, I mean full of sap. And then as it dries down, it starts warping, and suddenly this end's way up here and that end's way over there, and it started to straighten. It looks like an S when you're done, and you're really frustrated because you put a lot of time into it. Or you could carve a bowl, and it's going to crack. So when you boil it, with hot water, you're cooking the sap out, you're replacing the sap with the water, and somehow when the water evaporates out, it doesn't crack. Now, we've made this summer, we made two two dugout canoes out of white pine logs. They each weighed between 3,000 to 4,000 pounds. And they're full of sap. And like I said, a log, when it's round, it wants to crack. Pine will crack right to the middle. And the way that we dealt with that was, once we got them hollowed, they're still wet, we kept them wet, kept the sap in, worked them right away. And once we got them down to the point they were about the right thickness, We filled them full of water and we heated stones. We heated stones in the fire, and we kept adding a series of stones, bringing these canoes to a boil. That softened the wood so we could actually take a whole canoe and make it 6 inches, 8 inches wider, change the shape, make the ends go up. But when it dried, it didn't crack because it cured the wood. So when we use fire to hollow out a Vertoggen, it does two things. It takes whatever water or sap is in this yellow birch and it cooks it out. It drives it out, and that cures it so it won't crack. The other thing it does is it hardens the wood. It makes a hardened and polished surface for you to grind your food on. So it's a very, very functional way to hollow it out with fire. It's doing those things. The other thing I should point out, and the reason why we're doing this workshop right now, is this is the best time to make a Vertoggen. The reason why is because there's no sap in the trees right now. You know, the trees are dry. In the wintertime, the trees store their sap down in their roots, and the trunk is dry because if they were full of sap, that sap would freeze and then it would damage the wood. So just like maple trees, in the next week or so, it's going to start warming up, and then it gets warm in the day, and the sap goes up, warm at night, the sap goes down. It's just pumping up, pumping down. We want to harvest this wood when it has the least amount of sap in it, because it's the least likely to crack. It's the least likely to give us problems, and it's easier to burn out to hollow. When we use fire to burn this out, when I made my first one about 20 years ago, I had a little gouge, and I made a little hole about this big around in the top of a log, and it was a big oak log. It was like this, and it just seemed like it would be a nice one to make. So, and I hollowed it out, and then I put some coals in there, and then I had if you know what Phragmites is, it's a type of invasive plant like a reed. And there's two kinds. There's a native one and an invasive one, but I don't know which one I had. But I gathered some of these reeds, and I took a wire and I poked the little connectors out, and then I blew on it, and then that would cause the coals to spread onto the wood, and I could kind of control it. And little by little, I hollowed up this giant log. It helped that I was doing a camp at the time I was working at that was for Anishinaabe kids from the area, from Lansing and Grand Rapids specifically. It was a summer camp, and so I had lots of little kids, and they all wanted to do this too, which was good because I smoke a lot, and I shouldn't, and I don't have as much wind power as little guys do, and then everybody wanted to take a turn. But the problem is that with a reed, and I still haven't solved this yet, is at the end of the reed would light on fire because it would get hot, and then you'd accidentally go, and then you'd inhale Phragmites smoke, and that's really no fun, and then you'd be coughing, and then my reeds would burn up, and I'd have to get more reeds. And so a friend of mine was watching me do this. He says, hey, you can go up to the auto parts store and get a piece of brake line, and then you can kind of squeeze it in at the end, and then it's like a metal reed, and you can blow in that. So then he went and made me a couple of those, and those were really good, and little by little, you'd burn this, and you can control it and keep it even, and it will go deeper and it'll go wider. And after that, somebody else brought me some Fireplace Bellows, the type that you used to have out of fireplace wood and leather, and then I didn't have to blow. I could just go, and you could get it hot enough that when it's all lit on the inside, you pull back and it would throw a flame about this high in the air. It was really amazing. It just hollowed it right out. And so the first ones that I made, they would take maybe 3 or 4 days to get hollowed, like this one here that I've had for a long time. But over time, other people wanted these and wanted to make them, and they didn't have a whole week just to make one. And so we began to think, how can we make this process better? So another friend of mine, he says, hey, I got an air compressor. You don't have to do that. So we used an air compressor and made a long nozzle, and you can use that and spray that down in there. And then we learned how to be able to take a chainsaw and make a few dive cuts, putting the tip down in and moving it around so you get the hole started. But it's still the fire which is hollowing it out. It's still the fire which is getting it in shape. And I don't think there's any way to make that part better. So the process, whether we incorporate modern tools or we do it with all you know, reeds and rocks, and things like that. It works really good. The final step, once it's deep enough and it's finished and it's perfectly smooth, is we use sand and water. And we take them down to a lake, or you can even do it in your house if you have sand in a bowl. And you put that sand and water on the inside, and you just scrub and wash this. And that knocks all that charcoal off. You can use a clamshell or spoon to scrape it, but you're still going to have charcoal. And that won't hurt you. It's actually good for you. And so I always tell people, don't worry about it if you have some in your first batch of corn you run through, because it's actually medicine for you. The charcoal is good for you to eat. So you put that right in, cook it up, and people, oh man, how come your corn mush is all black? It's got extra charcoal. But every time you run more stuff through your Vertoggen, it'll be cleaner and cleaner, and it'll get shinier and nicer with use. You know, you'll just being able to handle the Vertoggen off, it will get shinier and it will get nicer. Something that Buddy told me as well, and I just started doing this, is on the underside of the Vertoggen, this side down here. He said that he had seen ones when he was younger that had a dish-shaped impression, real shallow, carved in, not burned, just carved. And that there was a stone shaped like this, and that those were used for grinding up some fresh plants, like if you had fresh mint and you want to grind that up, or other things in your cooking, that you use that side for that. He said, but not all of them had that. And that's something that, you know, we started doing just recently, and I'm still learning about all of this. Like, it's one of those things that if you have one of these and you make it, you're gonna like make discoveries all the time. And I hope everyone does make discoveries, and by picking this stuff up, because it hasn't been picked up for a very long time, and there's a lot of power in doing that. There's a few pieces of equipment that I brought that kind of go with it. Like here's one right here. This is a little quabga. It's a little dipper or a scoop. And this is made out of maple. You could make it out of that bottom of the yellow birch. Really any wood, it doesn't matter. I'd want a hard wood, not a soft wood. Like you wouldn't want to make it out of cedar, because it'd probably break. But it's just a real simple little, almost like a spoon without a handle. And for years, I always pounded stuff in here. I made cornmeal or things like that. And then when I was done making it, I would pick up the log up and dump it out into a bowl. And this was just my way of doing things. And then a friend of mine from up in Mohawk country, he watched me pick it up. And he goes, "Here's your scoop." And I was like, "Wow, mind blown! Like a scoop! Like wow, I could reach in and just." It sounds like a stupid thing, but it was like a revolutionary in my mind, and I was like, I need a scoop. My life would be so much easier. So then he sent me a couple pictures of old scoops, and some other friends, they started showing me pictures of scoops, and I started looking at pictures of things in all the museums, right? Because as me and Punkin were saying earlier, these things were taken from families. They all ended up in the museums. A lot of them, they have online collections now, and you can go and look, and you can see where they come from. You can see them, you know, and so there's a lot of these in these collections, right? And I like to have a little string on it so that you can hang it up on the wall right by where your Vertoggen is, and if you want to reach down and scoop your stuff out, you know, that's a good tool to have. This is another tool, which is really an important tool for a Vertoggen. This is a sifter. That's what this is. There's a word in Anishinaabe for this, because there's a word for everything, but I can't remember it. But it's made out of black ash. It's just really, really fine splints, and just like a wire sifting basket. It's got a wooden carved rim, and this is important because whatever you're pounding in here, you're probably going to sift. Like if you're making mush or cornmeal, you'll want to separate the coarse from the fine, or rice flour. And so in the old days, you know, the black ash baskets had a lot of function to them. Over time, you know, they become fancier and fancier, and because there's a market to be able to sell them, and they become less of a functional art and more of a decorative art. But back in the day, there were so many functional baskets, and I have a personal mission because I have spent most of my life around black ash basket makers and basket people. And I live in a basket making community, which has always been a basket making community, and my teachers have all been basket makers. And I really want to connect all the people doing food sovereignty work to all the basket makers, because nobody makes these types of baskets anymore. Like, this is a corn washing basket. It's got a twill weave and it's got 2 handles. And I have some at home that were made by Josh and Sarah from here in Bay Mills. And they're really amazing, because this is what you use to wash your hominy, when you haul your corn and ash it. And you can scrub it up against the sides. You put it right in your sink. We do it right in the lake, right in the river. We take it right in the river, put it right in the Rabbit River, and it washes all the ashes out and it cleans it. And once again, you're incorporating those basket makers into your food traditions. You're incorporating the ash tree into the tradition. When we make these cedar mats, these bags, these other things, we're incorporating those into that food system. There's a couple bags I want to show you that are part of this too. This is a cedar bark bag here. It's woven out of cedar bark. In the old days, this is what rice and corn was stored in. So this is if you're going to use your Vertoggen, this is what you store your corn in. And it's not just a decorative thing, it has a really practical purpose. If you're familiar with cedar, one of the qualities of cedar, it has a protection quality. But that part of that protection quality is that bugs don't like cedar at all. So you can put a cedar block and keep moths out of your sweaters and stuff, or you can put your corn in here and corn millers will stay right away from it. They won't even get into your stuff, because in the old days, people used to fill the corn up in bags like this in different sizes, and then they would sew them up at the top, and then they would bury these in a cache under the ground. So, that was your bank deposit. So as you move to your place, maybe you make it to your sugar bush camp, you hadn't been there for a year, and you pull out all your kettles and start getting your supplies, and you go and open that cache up, and there you have all your bags of corn, your deposits that were made for the year before, stored away. So it has a lot of practical function. And I think that, there's this idea that there's this separation. It's an idea that comes from Western culture, which is really weird. There's this whole weird word, art. Like, what the heck is this thing, art? And I talked with some friends one time. We were at Trent University, and we were talking about art, and I think we collectively came up with our best definition was that art is the taxidermy of spirit. It's taking something which has a spirit purpose and making it into like you killed it and you hung it on the wall, and I think that I think that a big part of something important is to take whatever someone says, this might be craft, this might be art, people who work with spirit, the abstract, however you want to call it, and to incorporate that within things which are practical, daily life things, because that's how our system is going to be. We're going to become healthy as people, as human beings in the world. We can't, when our artists become our leaders, when they're in charge, then our world will really be healthy. But I want to see craftspeople and the art, whatever you might call it, I wouldn't say this is art. Maybe it is. I don't know. Art's a weird word, but it's a thing. And people who make things, and people who make things with beauty, and people who make things with spirit into it, in a message, in a way, in a communication with a spirit purpose, can all be incorporated, because I think that's powerful. So this is another one here, down here, which is a part of the food system. This is a bag. It's made out of nettle fiber. This is a corn washing bag. So once again, just like the basket, you can take and you can put your corn in here after you haul it and wash it. You can use this, put this right down in the river and let it rinse. You can actually tie it down to a stick, put it under water, leave it for a few hours, leave it overnight, come back, pull it up, and then it'll all be really clean. So, all of these things are part and parcel of this really beautiful work. And, our hope is to be able to do what we can to put things back into place. Like, knowledge is, everybody makes it seem like there's this system where there's like one really old, knowledgeable person, and you know, like you gather up your gifts, and then you go on this great journey, and you come to them, and you give them the gifts, and then you sit at their feet, and they have all these wise things to say, and then you know something. And they don't always work like that. There are so many ways that you come to this knowledge of these types of things, you know, and it starts by asking, it starts by, you know, putting out offerings and asking for the knowledge. Knowledge can come to you in dreams. Knowledge will come to you through lots of people who know different parts. Usually it's people know parts. Sometimes people know things and they don't even know they know them because they grew up and maybe they had this in their household and they're an elder and they never thought that anyone would be interested because they never thought about it. But the more that you're around this and the more that you're talking about this, and somebody says, you know what, there was my grandma had one, my auntie had one of those, and they did this, you know. And those are little valuable tidbits because it's like a big clock, right? All this knowledge that created a beautiful way of life that was sustainable for people for many thousands of years, and it was shattered intentionally. And there's a fragment over here and a fragment over there. So what everyone's doing now is going and picking up this little piece and saying, how does it fit and what are our responsibilities to it? And that's a process, and it's not an easy process. And along the way, because we're human, we're going to make mistakes. We're going to do things and it's not going to work. You know, we think about that first teacher, you know, Nana Bojo, Wayna Bojo, and his methodology of learning, and it's full of mistakes, and mischief, and trying it out, and doing something incredibly idiotic and stupid, and sometimes coming up with something wonderful along the way. But bringing amazing and good things to this earth through that sort of medicine. So don't be intimidated to want to do the work to pick up these sorts of bundles. It's okay if you make mistakes along the way. It's okay if you to fumble around, and we try all sorts of crazy things all the time when we're doing stuff, and you know, sometimes it's hilarious, it doesn't work out, and sometimes it's absolutely amazing, and things come to us in different ways when we're doing this, you know, through little conversations or through dreams, through everything, you know, through the trees themselves and materials, through old items, all of it. So it's a powerful thing to do. And if you're going to begin working on picking up these things too, I would say that don't try to do it alone. I mean, you can if you don't got nobody else around you, but it works better if you work with other people to do this together, because we're human beings and we're not solitary beings. You know, we work with each other, and that's what makes us healthy. Is we're communities, we're families. We hold each other accountable, and we encourage each other, and we build off of each other's excitement and knowledge. And there's great strength and beauty in that as well. And so, you know, we want to encourage you all to pick that up and to begin to reach out to those around you who have those connections, to find those friendships within this work that you can build upon. And the other thing I want to say with that too is that you don't have to wait for, like some people will say, well, we should have a tribal program that does that, but you don't need that. Your ancestors never had a tribal program that did that. It would be great if you did, but you can just pick it up and do it. You can just pick it up and do it. And that's even more powerful if you do it in your own way as a community, in your own way. And so I hope that's really, those are just a lot of my top of my head ramblings about what I probably think about things and what I've learned. I might be wrong tomorrow. I'm always good at proving myself wrong and finding out that I don't really know something that I thought I did know pretty good. So that's kind of exciting. I don't know if anyone's got questions about stuff.
So we did have, I think I saw one question up here.
Yeah, we're competing today with the Mars rover, so we're not anywhere near as exciting as a thing landing on Mars. I only have 2 fears in life. I'm afraid of donkeys and space travel. So I don't want to watch the Mars rover. I'm going to stay on Earth.
This is also an update. It's 3:53. But our question is for Punkin. What exactly were you referring to in your left hand earlier for self-defense for women?
Oh,
Can you
it's
talk
the
a little bit more?
Baganagan. And that's it's a weapon that this one was made by Kevin for my birthday this past year, and he knew I was really struggling after the loss of my partner in April. So he also knew I needed protection, being a widow, a single woman living alone. Um, the this has been building up my shoulder strength. So this is just a graduation for my muscles to remember another way of protection. Um, I've been told that the Baganagan was carried by Anishinaabe Bhutan, and that I've seen jingle dressers wearing it right here. Part of their bundle, their work, their protection, their spirit work. I've seen old birch bark writings that show our ancestors with this being, this spirit. Because it's rounded and it doesn't point directly to our creator is why I heard we can carry this. We weren't allowed to have the arrow where the spear points, especially if they were made of copper, because that represented the our Ninawak, their teachings with fire and copper versus our teachings with water and copper. So we were allowed to use these relatives, our Matika relatives. There's also a beautiful story on that relationship with Canoe, the golden eagle protector for our people. That one that lives in those highest trees, that one that searches and protects us as Anishinaabe Bhutan looks over our daughters. That relationship with that star, the Ganuanung, that one that it's only his or her voice that protects this planet from the breath of our sun. It's his petition and his call, his Ogechida way that protects this earth place for us. So all of these relationships we understand, when we are starting to carry and empower our young women, to pick up their rightful place in Anishinaabe history here. We're at a turning point, critical. The world is speaking and crying out. And if we're not listening, it's because we put blinders on, or we've not allowed our ears to listen, and we've not allowed our noses to smell and provide that intuition that we know something is coming. And, my sister Shannon is, she's made it a point for us as Ogechida, to familiarize ourselves with these methods of protection. If we don't have our brothers, our uncles around, we can protect each other. Same with the mokaman, the knife. When we use these, when we have smaller young Kwewa wondering and watching, we encourage them. My grandma Kisokwe always said, the sooner they cut themselves, the sooner they're going to learn. And that education has to start early. We have to start early with these children of ours so that they have this for the future. There'll be a critical time when we're all going to have to depend on these relatives for life again. We're going to have to know how to approach them, know how to ask them, know how to work with them, strip them down, find their most beautiful parts of their medicines that they have to offer. Like we said, these were all living creatures, living beings out there. And they've always encouraged us to use them. That's part of the petition between creation and Anishinaabe, is that these ones spoke up for us. They stood up for us and said that we will help these pitiful ones that have come here. With that, I just want to say be blessed for this good day, the ability to bring these here to your community, where they'll be used for generations. Someday, maybe 7 generations, this Botagen that stays here will carry that rhythm and that story from where it was sounded here again. Just like I know this one did 100 years ago. And when we hear that sound, that community, when we hear the black ash pounding, when we hear this in our communities, we could hear these for miles. We knew the next generation or the next community down the river, down the path, was also doing the same work. So we were all in unison with that heartbeat, that dance for life, that pushing, that pulsating rhythm that brings life to this place. And when we dance out of here, we dance out the same way. We got to dance this life out. We dance it in, we dance it out. These things provide that motion for us while we're here, give that rhythm to every day that we forget about with our creation, with that sacred trust that we have with creation. So it's just so important for us to pick up that rhythm again, to find that, to memorialize it, bring it back from where it will exist way back here with these ones. And they're encouraging that. They're pulsating it forth for us to pick up, to use, to make food for our children, our elders, our communities, our feasts. So it's all about honoring life. It's all about being a part of the rhythm of her life, her heartbeat. Because, Kevin and I just sitting here, we're just pieces of dust mites. And like we said, the importance of that community to make it a larger picture, a larger beat, a larger pulse, because it comes from everybody's right here. It comes from everybody's right here. It comes from everybody's right here. It takes all of that movement to make us exist in this beautiful life.
So it is 4:02, but we did have some more questions come in. Do you all want to go ahead and answer?
Yeah, we'll do the questions.
Okay. So at what age would a young woman get their own battalion? Is there
That little one we see.
Yeah, we was just. I don't have the answer, but I'll comment as best as I can. We were traveling a few years ago and come across a little Vertoggen at a nature center, and it was very old. Had to be like 150 years old. It looked just like this one, and it was only maybe this tall, and the little pounder was only like this long, but it was like perfectly made, and it was sized for somebody who was maybe 5, 6 years old, and we were just talking about that just before we started this, about that one, because that's what we were talking, is that we think that that was made for someone who was just real young. So I think probably started early.
And the grandmothers would have sensed somebody's special characteristics or leanings towards seeds, versus towards you know, maybe fishing or gathering with somebody else. They would have kept those ones close and special, and they would have made these ones special for those gifted children that somehow were able to make those connections at such young ages. And that's what's the beauty of, you know, our Anishinaabe way was somehow we have to recalculate how we look at those children that are coming up, because they are carrying a lot of knowledge already within them. And we're seeing it manifest with our own children, with our own grandchildren.
So the next question says, regarding types of wood you can use for Vertoggen, can you use red or white oak or osage, orange, all which are very hardwood?
That's a good question, and I'm glad that question was asked. You could technically use any hardwood, however, those are going to crack. My experience is that they will crack. There's the only two woods that I know of that grow in the Great Lakes area is the yellow birch or black birch, the minzik, that we have here that we use, and there's another one that grows. Its northern range is right where we live on the Rapid River, and that one's English name is black gum. I've never heard the Anishinaabe name for it, and unfortunately where we lived, probably in the last 10-15 years, we've lost the last speakers in the community. So we don't have no one to ask, and up north it doesn't grow. But black gum is a type of tree that it has a rougher bark on it, and it's lighter weight. It's not as dense of a wood, but the wood grain is really crisscrossed in it, and because of that, it doesn't crack. So we see some really old mortars made out of black gum. Out west, like in Oklahoma, they use a variety of oak called post oak, but that's the only one. I have a friend who's a good friend who lives in Indiana, and he's an older guy, and he is got an engineering mind, and he likes to research stuff. So we'll talk about something like mortars, and then what he'll do is start going through and researching the characteristics of trees, or looking at all the different species identified and come up with like a giant chart, which is something I would never do, but I find it really interesting. He's got that sort of mind. I don't have that kind of mind. And, you know, the ones that we know about, another one is sycamore, but he's made some sycamore mortars, and he's got only about maybe a 40% success rate. The rest of them crack. But these yellow birches, they won't crack. And I mean, you could make it out of any of those. It's just a lot of work to make, and it's really disappointing when it cracks. So the ones that I absolutely know is the yellow birch and the black gum from this area.
So our next question says, please describe the makuk that is in front of Kevin, and what bark is it made from?
Oh, that's yours.
Oh, yeah. Well, this is Pumpkin's basket, but it's one that I made.
That I pirated.
Punkin pirated it, but she's my sister. She gets to pirate stuff. So those are benefits you have. There are many people in my world who have pirating license. They go mine. But that's really good because there's a lot of people I love a lot. It's good for them to have stuff. This is makuk is made out of elm bark. This is American elm. And a lot of the old baskets that are really durable are made out of American elm. You can only peel it. It's called Anibe or Onibe. And you can only peel this tree in the springtime. By us, it starts usually in April, and usually by the 4th of July, it sticks to the tree. You can't get it off anymore. But the bark is really tough. You can make canoes out of it. We made the Potawatomi people made traditional Elmbark canoes. We made an Elmbark canoe this summer in June out of a giant elm tree and out of one piece. It makes baskets. It was used for most of the summer homes for Anishinaabe people in the lower Great Lakes, like down in southern Michigan, probably even up into this area, as well as Weeguas birch bark. It has a piece of birch bark on the front. It's winter bark, so it's been harvested when the sap's not up in the either late fall or early spring. And then I just etch some flowers on, and It's got a combination of cedar bark and a smoked hide strap on it, and it's sewn up with spruce root at the top. The sides are sewn with American elm bark or hickory bark. So like all of these trees have different qualities that can be used for making stuff, but they make a same sort of, any basket you can make out of birch bark, you make out of elm bark. The elm bark's be tough. I want to show you all something. I don't know if you can see me, but this is
Yeah, do it.
all right. So
make sure the strap's not under it.
Oh, that's it.
Yeah.
this will be extra challenging because I haven't done this since I broke my foot. I broke my foot this summer, so I have a broken heel. I may have to have surgery to have it fused, but I think I still got pretty good balance. But I just want to point out, I'm not a heavy duty person. Like I'm not a 300-pound guy, you know, but
There's no cracking.
no cracking, no nothing.
No,
Every time
stable.
every time I make an elm bark basket or have anyone make it, I have to make them stand on it because that's how tough this is. It's super durable.
And I'm sure the bigger ones like this, the elephant would probably stand on it.
Yeah, we
and
do.
he would be able to
We make really big ones this size and bigger that are
Yeah.
used for storing like lots of corn
rice.
storage, all the rice.
The ultimate rice store would be to fill this up and keep it with your home. That's our goal.
In the old days, during the fur trade and up and through the probably 1860s, 1870s, in Michigan, all the sugar that got exported, hundreds of thousands of pounds of maple sugar, seeds of buckwood that was made by Anishinaabe communities. The standard unit for sale was a McCuck, and that was 60 pounds by weight.
Yeah.
So that's like a slightly smaller than this, but close to this size. And in the 1850s, that was like, I think it was like maybe like you know, under $1. So you know, for under $1, you got 60 pounds of sugar in the basket.
And a McCuck.
It could hold 60 pounds. But if you look at old pictures of sugaring, you'll see a lot of pictures of those Anishinaabe with these great going to town with these like huge, beautiful birch bark baskets with a big applican strap. They're carrying them into town, and they were making you know, like hundreds of thousands of pounds of sugar, like hundreds of thousands of pounds, like. And that relates to all of this because that was when people didn't have like reverse osmosis, they didn't have suction machines, they didn't have evaporators, they had grandmas with kettles and axes. Grandmas, kettles, axes in the woods. And they made more maple sugar then than they do today. So what that tells me is that, you know, the apocalypse of knowledge is already happened. Like we're in Mad Max time right now when it comes to knowledge. And that's what we have to work, because that's what the goal is, because that can happen again. You know, it can happen again.
So, we have a follow-up question. Did you say black gum from Missouri as a potential wood to use for battalion?
I did say, yep, black gum. And I don't know its Latin name. I think that they also call it pepperidge down south. A unique thing I learned this last year about black gum, it's a unique, interesting fact, is that in the 1800s, the beekeepers didn't have the type of hives they had now. They had what was called a bee gum, because it was a hollow section of a gum tree about this big, and they would put rods across and have a little roof on it. And then the bees would make their honeycombs off of that inside that hollow section. So it's called a bee gum because it's made out of black gum wood. And those were, yeah, that's from that same type of tree. And it used to be used in the old days to make the sugar chops too. In fact, we got a bunch of big sections of it back at our place. These guys are all laughing because we get back. We're going to be chopping out a bunch of sugar chops, sending them to everybody's sugar bush to get them all ready for sugar season.
Have one more question. So our last question for today is, could a Vertoggen skirt be made of woven fabric, like cotton?
Could be made of a skirt.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Any materials.
Awesome.
Yeah. The skirt is like, I've heard it like the teepee many ways, like in the West, that they refer to the teepee covering. And we've also referred to the dome. It's just like this is your dome that you're covering, the most sacred part of your body, which is that doorway to create and sustain life. So if we look at that as like life exists in those secret, sacred places, when we look at nests, and when we look at beaver lodges, when we look at the engineering of our own wigwam, that's always a representation of a woman in full life, carrying life. So whenever we enter into those things, it's like we can emulate coming back out and being rebirthed or rethought of or remade, carrying something out that we didn't know going in, but now coming out, we have that ability to have that knowledge or tip upon it, a little bit of it fungi, because that's what the spirits do. They always lead you just a little bit down, and then they leave you stuck there for a little bit. And then, like this morning when we heard drumming and singing along the channel, and all of a sudden that thunder came, with the water thunder, and empowered us again in some spiritual way that we're still understanding our own self, what happened there. I guess that's the communication from the spirit. What we are doing is being encouraged. I don't know how else to say it.
Okay, we have one more question that popped up really quickly. So one of the participants said that they live in Central Illinois. Do you all have any suggestions on how they might trade for a few yellow birch logs?
Well, they can contact myself or Punkin on like Facebook, social media, or I'm sure that they could contact the Community College here to get a phone number, email. That'd be fine too. You can reach out to us, and we're easy people to talk to, and we can help. Like, we try to help where we can help, and we do what we can do. We're not superhumans, and we can only be so many places at one time. But we want to honor being able to get these tools into people's hands, and so reach out to us, and we can probably help you get one.
We're good on questions, so just want to thank our instructors for this afternoon. I know that I've learned so much, so thank you both for sharing your knowledge and your wisdom on your culture. It's just been so beautiful to listen to you all today. And thank you to all the participants who joined this workshop. And hopefully we all will meet again soon. So I guess I'll end the Zoom webinar now. All right. Bye, everyone.